David. How are you? Good morning.
Yeah,
Talking about negative gearing.
negative gearing, don't fear it. Probably one of the most important things in life, and it's not taught.
Don't fear negative gear. And you know what? A lot of people have to understand that anyone who is someone in terms of business and investment runs the negative gearing with property or properties. It is one of the greatest tax incentives that our government offers. And the reason why our government offers it is because they want to encourage housing. They want to encourage having investment properties, which helps tenants. It brings investment properties in Australia, bring affordability to people. So people often think investment properties in Australia are feeding the landlords, which are fat cats. But what it's also doing is feeding the entire real estate property market to be affordable. So when immigrants come from overseas, they actually have somewhere reasonably cheap or reasonable to rent, rather than it's just too expensive. I just won't move to Sydney. I just won't move to Melbourne.
So
Negative gearing is critical.
So let's, in a nutshell, what's gearing is basically the debt on a property is another term for debt, gearing. And negative gearing is when you look at your income for that property, that asset brings in, which is generally rent, versus your total outgoings. Now, outgoings are council rates, strata, agent fees, insurance. Now, when a property, when you minus the income, when you minus the expenses from the income, it's a negative. That's negative gearing. Some properties are positive. So, in a nutshell, good morning, Jeff, Todd, Lisa, Kramer, Margaret. Todd loves negative gearing. If you don't reduce,
Todd loves negative gearing. He's got to do more. He's got to do more of it. Look, it's a great position of owing money for accommodation in Australia. You are rewarded for it. You are rewarded tax-wise for owing money in Australia if you're owing money on a property. That's effectively what negative gearing is. But what people have to forget is there's two forms of benefits when you own a property, an investment property: capital, which is the big ticket item, the value of the property, and cash flow, which is your basically runnings of the property, your year in, year out. I'm up or I'm down on owning the property. So we never can really spend the capital. The value of the property is locked.
Isn't it? That's the powerful thing about it. It's just for savings. It almost doesn't feel real until it's there. You can't really screw it up. So as long as you don't.
Well, you know what? And it's so arduous. It's so big and it's so lumpy. It's not, and you can't trim. You can't take 10% of the value and go and spend it on a plasma television and a holiday. It's so lumpy that it just sits there forever. So that's the capital. That's the value of the property. You see, shares are different because you can dilute 10%. You can sell 10% of your shares. You can sell 20% of your shares, and I can do that in a minute. I can go online and sell that many shares. And it
does have the big exit costs as well, and the time frame.
So property's great. But we're not talking about capital today. But I just wanted to explain the difference. That's the value of the property. We're not talking about the value of the property. What we're talking about today is what most people know as cash flow. Cash flow. So cash flow is money in, money out over the course of the year. So, like you said, well, Michael, after you've paid your outs for the investment property and you've calculated your ins for the investment property, if you are out of pocket at all, the government will give you money back on your tax. And allow us to explain that a little bit more. Again,
give us an example, Mark. We've got a 2-bedroom unit. The income's $500 a week. Let's just say 25 grand a year. Use round numbers.
So it's DY. It's Northern Beaches, and we're always talking DY. Let's talk Randwick. Okay, it's Randwick, and it's $1 million for a 2-bedroom unit. Now that $1 million, I've got a debt of 800,000 on my unit in Randwick. That unit in Randwick, with a debt of 800,000, has a 4% interest rate I have to pay every year.
Yep.
4 times 8 that's $36,000 a year. $36,000 a year I have to pay back to the bank. I have strata, which is 1,000, so that's 40,000 a year. After I pay my strata, my council is 1,000. That's 41,000 a year. I have to pay every bloody year for my Randwick unit, as an example. Okay. Now, what happens then is that's my outs. That's what I'm spending to keep that investment. Now, my ins are what?
Rental income. So you got a tenant in place, and they may pay $700 a week. We'll just say 30,000 a year.
Okay.
It'll be about a 3% return on the value, which is probably where a rental rate is. So 30 grand.
Okay, so my ins are 30, my outs are 11.41. My ins are 30 because it's rent. My outs are 41, which is strata, water council, and the bank.
And what does that mean? Drum roll.
So that means, drum roll, I've got to pay bloody $11,000 year in, year out to keep that puppy. I hope like hell it's going to go up in value.
Well, why would you buy a property if you're going to lose 11,000?
Because thank you for that question. Because I hope like hell it's going to go from 1 to 1.1. I hope it's going to go from 1.1 to 1.2. Heck, over 10 years, I hope it's going to go from 1 million to 2 million. And it's cost me per year net 11,000.
Okay. So that's why people do it. Otherwise,
okay. Yeah. Now over to you. Now that I've got that 11,000 owing that year, that is called negative cash flow. That is called, the government calls it negative gearing. What can I do with negative gearing?
Okay, so now you can go to your accountant, and let's just say your income was 150,000 for the year, just like when you do your tax return, where you may have uniform, your phone bill. Basically, you've got all these deductions to bring your cash, your income down, because that's the rate that you're going to be charged on. So if you've got an investment,
everyone's got a different tax rate that they pay. So at the end of the year, your accountant's going to say you had to pay 30 cents, 45 cents, whatever your tax rates are. Yeah, the accountant's going to say, hey, you've earned this much. You've got to pay this much. You've got to pay this much percentage in tax, or you have paid this much percentage in tax.
And they do your bracket on the total after deduction. So let's just say there's $100,000. Say if you earn 101, it goes up to 50 cents on the dollar. And if you're under 100, it's 25. I know they're the wrong numbers. I'm exaggerating it to make it clear. Let's just say that on your group certificate, it was 101, but then with 109,000, but then you've got $11,000 of property deductions, which then brings you back down to 98. And then you get a lower tax rate. You're getting taxed less on your income as well. And that's why people do it.
Okay. So in dummy math, this is not, you're more accurate in the way you've said it. I'll say more inaccurately, but more in a simple way. So you put your hand up and said, hey, it just cost me 11 grand this year to have this bloody Randwick unit. Yeah.
Yep.
If you paid 30 cents in a dollar tax, our friends in government will give you 30% back of that 11,000. Our friends in government will give you back 30% of the 11,000. 30 cents in every dollar. So you will get a fat check back for 3,100 or 3,300, whatever it is, $3,300. You'll get a check back. So so every month you've paid for this bloody unit in Randwick, silly mortgage, $1,000 you're paying every month, $800-900 every month. And at the end of the year, forced savings. At the end of the year, you've done your return, you get a check back. Your check comes back for $3,300 out of nowhere.
Yep.
So you go, you know what? Thanks for that check. That's bloody awesome. Because I would have given that money to, tax-wise, I would have given that money to the government anyway.
Yeah.
That is negative gearing.
Now, on the flip side, positive.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
you can do this one.
yes.
Let's do it on the Randwick unit. The rent's more now.
Yeah. So let's go with the same outgoings. Let's say you bought a commercial property, which is generally a lot of positive. I always advise it's really good to have a couple of the residential growing capital growth prior. They're a great foundation, because when you get the positive, where it's phenomenal, where your outgoings, let's use the example of the outgoings are still 41,000, but the income may be $70,000 a year. So you're getting a positive, which is on $1 million is a 7% return. So that's pretty much on the money. So you're going to be positive $30,000 a year. So, but there's generally a little less capital growth. There is no right or wrong strategy or right or wrong property. It all depends on your property portfolio, your income, serviceability, and your current structure as well. So there's no right or wrong. I find that a lot of our key landlords have a combination of both, but get your own advice and structure it either way. So the great thing about a property that's positively geared, and we've mentioned it many times on this talk, in a market where there's probably going to be a little bit less capital growth, it's probably imperative to find something that's pretty close to positive, if not positive, to get through the next few years. And commercial property is a great option. It's not just a plug because I'm an agent.
That was a massive plug for commercial, dude. We were just talking about. I finished off saying let's use the same Randwick example for positive gearing, and then you took the next 3 minutes just to plug commercial properties.
Yeah. Okay. So
we're not meant to be selling. Oh, it's like if you want to sell property, just put a post up of a commercial property. We're educating people here, man.
Educating. So your property's up $29,000 a year, but instead of waiting till tax time to get that benefit of your property, you're getting it each week in rent and above your outgoing. So if you break down your outgoings on $40,800, but your income's $75,000, so you get about $1,500. So you're almost getting an extra $700. But as Mark said earlier, when you've got cash in hand, I think we can all agree it's a very easy to spend it. So you may get to have this property for a couple of years and you look at, and it may not have the capital growth. You go, well, what's the point of owning it? It's made me no money because you've spent that extra cash each week. But it can increase your serviceability. It bumps up your income as well, which can really increase your borrowing power. But it also has the effect that, unlike negative gearing, where it lowers your tax and lowers your income, a positively geared property will increase it. So you may have to be prepared that you will have to pay money to the government. So, Mark, I've lost your face on Insta. So it does have, there are phenomenal pros and cons to both examples, but I think I think anyone going for a loan at the moment, they can agree serviceability, the banks they're wanting to see that income. So instead
I don't mind. I think everyone will say, I was saying last night with Tom Panos on the interview that we did, I think if you're trying to work out the market, the horse to back is one property owner purchases. So they don't have 2 properties or 3 properties. I still firmly believe if you're going for a loan, and I know you've done this recently, Michael, if you're going for a loan and it's your only property, I think you're okay. But it's when it's the second and third property, which is a lot of advanced and particularly advanced investors, you really get hit hard. So, I think you're okay if you're a one property owner.
Rob Brady, welcome, Michael Edwards. Don't forget, they'll sting you for capital gains once you sell. So what's that? So that was a negative gearing. Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
then with
look,
residential, but like residential, you live in it, what is it, 6 months, and then you got capital gains free for 6-7 years. And this is really appealing to those first, the buyers with 1 or 2 properties. You just never sell, Michael. Just keep accumulating.
yeah, look, I think our friends in government, they're helping you on the cash flow, but they want to share in the capital profits that you make out of the end. Even with that, they're going to give half. They're going to give you a free threshold at the end, half free, and you're going to pay tax on half. But look, guys, there's nowhere in Australia where you can make money and not pay tax legally. So that's a byproduct. But just to go back to 101 positive gearing, because I think I did the baby example on negative gearing, but the positive gearing, say that same Randwick property for $1 million that's renting for 700 a week. If you change that cash flow position where instead it's bringing in more money than what you're paying out. So in that negative gearing example, if you remember at the beginning of our chat, the unit was bringing in you were paying out 41 grand, which was interest, strata, water council, and you were bringing in 30 grand, which was 700 a week, 35 grand actually. But let's just say 30. As soon as you start bringing in more money than what you're paying out, you are positively geared. You are cash flow positive. You're making money. What happens when you make money?
You get taxed on it.
The government wants a piece of it. So, guys, if you ever hear that reference from people, negative gearing, you now know what they're talking about. And if you ever hear that reference from people saying positively gearing, you now know what they're talking about. So we're taking a 1 year snapshot of the investor's cash flow on that property, and we're saying if your cash up, it's at the end of the year, you put nothing out of your pocket. A matter of fact, it gave you a profit. That's cash flow positive. If at the end of the year you've put your money in to support the loan or the strata or the council, all of the above, and you put in money on top of the rent, then that's cash flow negative. So, you make a profit, it's cash flow positive. You have to put money out of your hard-earned money out of your own pocket. That's negative gearing. But fortunately, our friends in government will help you a little bit with your tax.
Well, I was just thinking, Mark, from what we said yesterday when we were talking about equity and pulling it out, negative gearing plays a big factor on, we're using the example, and Todd, you were listening yesterday, Jeff, where this is where really you need that financial advice, because you've got your family home, you buy the second property. We used an example that you had 600 grand of equity. You're buying an investment property. Now, in theory, you could use of releasable equity. Yes, you could use all of that 600 grand and almost have very little debt on that investment. That investment is the tax deduction. So you almost want to gear that up as much. Well, in most cases, obviously it's not financial advice, but what we see is in most cases, people will gear that investment up so it is negatively geared. So they will use as little releasable deposit, as releasable equity from their home to buy that investment, so it is geared and potentially is at a loss. So you can see where it starts getting complex and you start moving figures around and where you can shape it as well.
Yep. So using that Randwick unit that we use as an example today, if you had 500,000 and you are going in cash and you are going to buy Randwick as an investment, would you put in your 500 cash and borrow 500? No.
Correct. Michael's got a question. Do you guys organise depreciation schedules for all landlords? We've got Marty Sadler. He's a legend. He does a great depreciation schedule. I did it with a lot of landlords and buyers from the building across the road. I reckon depreciation is a great topic. I didn't realise until I had coffee with him. It's basically a building up to 40 years. There is a depreciation on that property. So you may buy a property that's 10 years old. you can still depreciate for about 30 years of that value of it. Obviously, it's scaled down. It's some big figures that you can depreciate. So
a lot of these depreciation companies say that if they don't pay for themselves the first year, that they will give you money back. That's how confident they are that you will make money tax wise because of that depreciation schedule. If you have debt or no debt on the property, it is irrelevant. It is depreciable. It's a depreciable asset.
I'll tag Marty in this, and if anyone needs, he's phenomenal with the what he can turn around in the turnaround time. We do offer it for all landlords. I think we need to talk about it. I think more people need to do it. It's huge. And once again, it just goes to helping you with your tax. At the end of the day, what did who quoted it? Todd did. If you don't reduce your tax, you're a bloody idiot. Quote from Kerry Packer. So true. So
if anyone wants to watch a brilliant piece of Australian business history, Google Kerry Packer court tax. He does YouTube Kerry Packer court tax, and there is a beautiful piece of Kerry Packer giving it to the Australian government about his rights of reducing tax.
I might Google it now and put a link in there. Was it Kerry Packer?
Reduce tax.
Reduce tax. Reduce tax. I'll put that.
Check
that link 2 minutes. Brilliant billionaire. Okay, I'll put that in there.
I think it's probably one of the best clips I've seen on YouTube. And Todd, thanks for reminding us on that. It is, it's a cracker. It's a cracker.
There's a 6-minute one. I reckon it's worth watching the full one. So I'll put that in there for everyone. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add, Mark? Or we're going to put our outgoing song on?
It's outgoing song, and it is a bloody beautiful day. And hope everyone's healthy and happy, huh?
Beautiful. I think tomorrow we had another topic recommended to us that we'll be doing. What was that? Super. Purchasing in the super. I think we'll touch on that. So
touch on that, and don't forget, guys, all this is podcasted. So if you want to share the podcast or this with friends or family, that's what we're here for, to help share it, and we survive on those shares. So like, shares, and that sort of stuff is really important to us, because believe it or not, it's an enormous amount of work for us, and we do scratch our heads sometimes and think I'll be crazy. But it is. We do a lot of people, patting us on the back, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we love sharing the knowledge. No one else. It's hard for it out there, and property is such a big part of everyone's life and our culture. So happy. Alrighty, guys, we'll see you tomorrow morning.
See you, man.
Bye.